At this time in 1957, the Infantry Board said they weren't happy with the Army's decision to move forward with the M14, and so they asked for potential alternatives. Keep in mind, there was tremendous amount of institutional inertia within the Army behind the M14. The Infantry Board was thus in direct bureaucratic conflict with the Army's Ordnance Department, which had just selected the M14 as the next Army service rifle in 1957. Now, since World War II and into the 1950s, more advanced techniques for scientifically evaluating various dimensions of ground combat were coming into fashion in the areas of rifle fire in combat and also ballistics as well as other areas. So, in fact, during the Korean War, which was 1950 to 1953, a bunch of analysts actually went to Korea to evaluate how exactly rifles were being used in combat. What they found, among other things, was that most rifle shots were taken at targets that were less than 300 yards away. Most of the time, they weren't actually seeing targets when they were shooting. They only aimed about 15% of their shots. And the philosophy of the infantrymen on the ground was to just lay down fire in the general direction of the enemy. So then, the Infantry Board points to these new studies and said, hey, the M14 is not as well suited for combat as combat is actually fought. So let's take a look at some other more innovative alternatives. Now, in 1957, the Infantry Board then brings in Eugene Stoner, the main design engineer behind the AR-15, out to Fort Benning for discussions about new possible rifle designs. So at this point in 1957, you have two totally different pockets within the vast Defense Department who were open to the AR-15. On the one hand, you have this small organization of forward-thinking individuals on the Infantry Board who don't have a whole lot of organizational influence within the infantry branch of the Army, and they're looking at looking for a new rifle. Well, simultaneously, you had Curtis LeMay, who is a hugely influential individual at the top of the Air Force. Now, these interests of these two very different parties would converge on the AR-15, and then within just a few short years lead to full-on adoption of the AR platform across the entire U.S. military. So the Infantry Board's next step was to evaluate new rifles, and this led to the 1958 Infantry Board Field Trials. So the field trials turned out to be just a pivotal event in the evolution of U.S. military small arms.